Welcome if you've joined us from the Ignition broadcast, and thanks for staying if you're already here on YouTube. Be warned, this does go into a lot of nerdy detail that's probably only going to be of interest to those of you who've got a GTL or perhaps thinking of getting one. If you've come here for a generic kind of road test, go to the channel homepage and look for part 1 of the GTL report. And if you're staying for this video, don't blame me if you fall asleep sometime in the next quarter of an hour, or do blame me, I won't be offended. Oh, and my terrible injury here, by the way, don't worry, I was filming some detail shots of the front wheel and stood up and headbutted the mirror. It's very well made, you'll be happy to know, because there's not a mark on it, unlike my face. Well, what a machine. As you've seen, it's hard not to be impressed with the GTL, but as I said, it's not perfect. So first off, let me delve into the couple of points I've got to make on that score. And unfortunately, they concern the very reason that the bike exists, and that is, of course, the ability to devour huge distances effortlessly. The engine and chassis do that perfectly, but what lets the side down a bit is the riding position. Despite it being a huge bike, there's actually very little in the way of legroom. I'm sure this is as a result of a conscious decision to give the rider as solid a footing on the ground as possible, given the size and weight of the thing, and so the seat is really very low at 750 millimeters. The payoff for that is not much room between your arse and your ankles, as the foot pegs can only be so low before they impede ground clearance. I never spent much more than an hour at a time before taking a break during filming, so obviously my view isn't definitive, but already in that relatively short time my knees were beginning to ache noticeably, and even the tops of my thighs were feeling not tired exactly, but you know, not perfectly rested either. There is an option for a seat of 800 millimeters, and I would definitely take that if I was average height or taller. With the lower seat, I thought the padding around the bum cheeks might have suffered a bit, but it actually seemed good. No hints at all of a numb bum, but like I said, I think I did one trip of 90 minutes or so, and everything else was less than that. Maybe someone who's got one of these and has done some serious distance can let us know in the comments. Wind protection is largely good, because there's the big screen that is electrically adjustable over a big range as well, so there should be a position to suit just about everyone. I kept it quite low during back roads riding because I prefer to look clearly over it rather than through it for cornering. Optically it's excellent, but as a personal choice I just don't like having the edge of the screen messing with my view ahead. Put it a little higher and you can make sure the wind buffeting passes clean over your head, and that means you can keep your visor open even at ridiculous speeds. A bit higher still and you're enveloped in a oasis of calm, so calm in fact that you don't even need earplugs. The downside, as anyone who's ridden with these huge screens before will tell you, is that you end up in trouble if you raise it too much and make it super calm for the rider. Then the turbulence tends to swirl around and behind you and can sort of push you in the back, forcing you into a kind of permanent press up against the handlebar, and that can get tiring over distance. And of course, when you've got the screen set just so, you can guarantee that the wind is now busy beating your poor passenger to death. We experimented with the screen everywhere between the two extremes, and nowhere really provided any decent protection that would make long distance touring a pleasure for my wife. The seat, she says, is superb. The back support, perfect. It's just that whatever we tried, the wind was always smacking her around, and that soon got irritating. I might just mention that Jax is tall, she's 1.78 m, and so I think a smaller passenger combined with the taller rider seat, which will make the rider act as a more traditional substantial windbreak, that'll be the way to go if you want to have peace and harmony in your life. Other irritations, I mentioned the fact that I'm blown away that the two-way quickshifter isn't standard on a 29,000 euro bike. My 9,500 euro MT-09 has it, and so on this you either need to get the comfort package or add it in separately at a cost of, I think it was as much as 500 euros. It works well, not great like most of these things at low engine speeds, but it is acceptable. It does go home with a massive mechanical clunk though, like you've dropped a sledgehammer into a skip full of anvils. Not pleasant, but at the same time sort of mechanically reassuring because it all just sounds so incredibly over-engineered. As always, in the lower gears, at slower speeds, I just do it the old-fashioned way and finesse the clutch and throttle myself. What else? Yeah, sorry, already rambled off on a tangent. I'm out of order in terms of my talking points. Not too much of a surprise there. Oh yeah, this is a surprising one and annoying. There's no adaptive radar assisted cruise control. This is the flagship touring bike, remember, and they've already put it on the RT and the R18 Transcontinental what's it. So I have no idea why it isn't on this. It really should be, and its omission is glaring. Unforgivable really. If there's any bike that should have it, it's this, and it kind of makes me think that it was a bit too much of an effort because this is a model that has possibly reached the end of its life and is due to be phased out in the next couple of years. Somebody did whisper in my ear that it was an issue of space. In other words, there wasn't enough of the stuff, but that's bollocks, isn't it? I mean, have you seen the frontal aspect of this thing? You could put a helipad on there and still have room for a fancy headlight setup. What else? Yes, the stereo. The GTL has it as standard, so there's digital radio, and now the aerial's been hidden away, so basically to all intents and purposes there isn't one, and you get your music via your phone like you do on so many bikes these days, for which there is a handy cubby hole above the TFT screen. There's a fan in there as well that will keep it cool, and you can plug it in and keep it charged, although not wirelessly or whatever the term is. When you turn the bike off, the screen automatically drops to its lowest position, effectively providing a locking security mechanism for the cubbyhole if you happen to leave your phone in there. And that reminds me, okay, another unplanned tangent here, about the luggage and cubbyholes that are in part carpeted and all beautifully finished. In the case of the top box on this bike, with an optional extra in the form of the chrome detailing that does add an air of class. Anyway, in some cases they feature even soft opening and closing. It's all very snazzy. They can all, this is the point I'm trying to make, they can all be locked via the one central locking button on the handlebar, and you can't believe that really is very handy indeed. Great for time saving. Right, trying to veer back on course now. Where was I? Yes, the stereo. Loud enough to be a viable sort of entertainment up to 100 kilometers an hour to push. But I'm not convinced. Not now when everyone's got in-helmet speakers for comm systems, or like me, even basic headphones so I can listen to my navigation. If you want music, then it makes much more sense to pipe it at a higher quality directly into your lug holes. And then you don't have to annoy everyone else with your doof, 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 doof as you ride by. Or worse still, as you're sitting waiting at the traffic lights. You may possibly, and mistakenly, think it makes you look cool, and it might have done 30 years ago, but now it just makes you look like a knobhead. Sorry, but it does. So thanks for the stereo, but no thanks, I never used it. Right, I mentioned the suspension in the test, and obviously it's electronically adjustable in terms of its responses between dynamic, road and rain modes, and it's also semi-active, so it's adjusting to the conditions based on what it's feeling through its sensors, heavy acceleration or braking, or a series of corners or bumps, and it can firm up on the damping responses, that type of thing. The 2022 update has also brought it automatic preload adjustment, something that you used to implement yourself via the single or double helmet symbols and luggage icons, telling the bike what kind of load to prepare itself for. Well, now it senses that itself, and it's actually very useful. I notice it because my wife and all her camera kit is regularly getting on and off the bike at each location, and to have the bike adjust its spring preload settings each time without being asked is fantastic. Talking of automatic adjustment, the headlights, they've now got added adjustability as well. So now not only will they swivel to light up more of a corner as you lean into it, they will also pitch forwards or backwards to account for the pitching that's involved with acceleration and braking. Useful safety stuff that you don't know you enjoy until it's taken away from you, to be honest. And I had a short ride in the dark and, well, it wasn't that dark with the lights on. I've nothing to compare it to directly, but I have to say in isolation, the lights were really very impressive. And talking of lights, there's now also, as an option I think, with the Comfort Pack, ground lights that help you make sure you've got firm footing and somewhere solid to put your side stand. And there's the welcome and goodbye lighting that you get on fancy cars. It all just adds to the feeling that you're riding a properly expensive top-end piece of kit, and adds to those warm, fuzzy feelings you get as an owner. Small stuff, but definitely nice to have. Excuse me, let me have a look again. There's a reverse gear now as well, and that is incredibly useful if you've maybe nosed yourself into a slightly downhill parking. It's not actually a gear, rather a clever use of the starter motor, but it does the same job. Oh, and hill hold control, or whatever it's called, automatically sets itself, or you can use it in manual mode, so you just give a firm dab on the brake lever and it engages until you pull off again. So leaving you free basically to do a hill start without the added manipulation of the brake. It's not necessary strictly for experienced riders, but I'm experienced and I appreciated it being there and I used it. So necessary and useful aren't always the same thing. Heated grips, obviously, and heated seats. The heated seat for the passenger has got its own control, and the heated grips and rider seat are buried away in the vehicle settings on the dash, which could be a major irritation if BMW hadn't thoughtfully provided 4 favourites buttons down the left hand side of the fairing that offer a shortcut to whichever functions you want to map them to. Very handy. So on my bike I had shortcuts to the heating, to the navigation, to the rider assist like the damping settings, and then also to the radio. There's a back torque limiter that other BMWs have had for a while now, and it's basically an electronic version of a slipper clutch. And I think that's about it. I'm sure there's more. It's probably the bike with the most standard features and options on the planet, so I'm bound to have missed something. Check out BMW's exhaustive list on its website if you want more detail, because I'm running out of steam. Oh, bit more steam. One very last thing about the details. I don't know if you've seen the test, whether you noticed the wheels. They're quite spectacular. Expensive looking things, and I couldn't believe they were standard equipment, so I took a look at the website, and it seems that they're the 719 option forged wheels, and they will cost you, let me get this right, yeah, I think with the bits and bobs that you need to make them fit, you're looking in the region of 2,000 euros. 2,000 euros, allegedly. Yeah, a lot of money, but if you've got it and you're blowing over 30,000 euros on your new touring bike, why not? As for the competition, well, you'd have to say that's Honda's Goldwing. Very similar traits, but its flat 6 engine comes in at about 35 horsepower shy of this, and as a consequence there's simply no arguing that it is inevitably nowhere near as entertaining. Having said that though, I think it's still rapid enough for the work it needs to do, and I really like that bike with Honda's DCT system. It's the perfect home for the dual clutch transmission and makes perfect sense on a full dress tourer like that. If you're intimidated by the size of the GTL, don't be. It's a bit like Doctor Who's TARDIS, but in reverse. Massive on the outside, but when you sit in it and get moving, even slowly, it shrinks around you and you soon feel completely at home and not intimidated by the size at all. Let me know in the comments if you'd consider the GTL as the ultimate touring bike, or indeed if you've already got one and whether you enjoy yours as much as I did this one during my admittedly short stint with it. On a more personal note, even though I wouldn't have one of these myself, I would love a bike with this engine. I don't know if you remember, but when they initially showed this motor over a decade ago now, it was in a concept sports bike, an RS type BMW thing. Something tells me in these eco-friendly times this model doesn't have much of a shelf life left, so the time for BMW to fulfill that promise is now. Please, my Bavarian biker comrades, do it. Put this engine, for me, in a naked chassis with a beautiful exhaust with 6 plainly visible headers, and I'll be a happy man. You should have done it long ago. Don't waste the opportunity to give us a truly memorable K1600R before this engine disappears into the history books for good. And on that note, you'll be glad to know that's it from me. Thanks for watching. I hope the video was helpful, and I hope to see you all in the next one.